What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Hey, I need to tell you something.
Oh, God, what is it?
Some time ago, we did an ad episode where we talked about how we were going to get better with our ads.
I was wondering where you were going.
Yeah.
We're so shit at the ads.
That's what we said. We said, we're so shit, we're going to get better, and we just didn't.
We don't. We're so full of shit. All right, well, here they are. We got 5 sponsors currently.
All right, who are they?
First is the OG, the Einzelwiener.
Oh, that knob.
The bullfed.
Yeah.
No, he's the OG. He's been with us
He's
since the
good.
start.
No, he's good.
He
He's
is
good.
going to
He's a
sell
good
you
boy.
whatever you need.
Yep.
He'll get it. What you should do is contact Jason from Einswick Dog Queer with some peculiar product, tell him you want it, and make him get it in and sell
Yeah.
it to you. Even if you could buy it somewhere else, just make sure he gets it in for you.
Just make that bastard work.
But in all honesty, I'd say 90% of my shit comes from him, and it's all the best stuff.
I did see some feedback on our forum where somebody was really intrigued about your handler package, the one that you got from Jason. Obviously, it works. Like,
Yeah, it's
people
good.
are paying attention to the
Yeah, the
ads.
leashes
That's
are good.
great. Even though we're shit at this, we do a terrible job of actually trying to keep things updated. It's great to see that the people who are investing in our show are actually getting some leeway.
Yep. Mate, I've heard that your wife sells some canine products.
My wife is doing great guns at the moment. I said before that she's been supported terrifically in the United States, which has been good, but I will swing that back home and say that so many more people in Australia are doing it. And it's great to see, like, there are people finally in the sporting dog world who are starting to prioritize nutrition for their dogs. And I know them. I can see them when Narelle comes in and says, oh, guess who bought some product off me for the first time. So
Are you saying there's no patient confidentiality?
no, there's
You're
patient
aware-
confidentiality.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a
purchaser
mailing list.
confidentiality.
Well, it's a mailing list.
Are you aware my dog is taking pee, collagen, and what's the other thing he takes?
Antonol.
Antonol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been on that.
Antonol is not Narelle's business, but I've got to do a shout out for Antonol. They are absolutely fantastic. They're very supportive of our show. Whenever we've done seminars and so forth, they have been first to dip their hand in their pocket. They are very generous with their product. But let me just say, all that aside, their generosity and their advertising and marketing, let me just say on the other side of that, their product is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it does work. It's very beneficial.
For sure.
It's one of those things where they say Antonol for every dog every day. I totally agree with that. Narelle has even supported that. When people have asked them about her product, she says the 2 things that I would absolutely give to you is Antonol and her Gut Protect formula.
Yeah, right.
Gut Protect is like her holy grail of
Like
her
the
whole
flagship
range.
of the range.
This is not me market talking, okay? Because
This is an ad.
This is an ad, but this is not me doing marketing.
But we've already pointed out we're shit at ads.
I know. Of all the things that she sells, and she sells some killer product, but the one thing that she does sell, which I absolutely agree with her, every dog should have this product, is the Gut Protect.
Really?
100%. It's nothing that they need for being sick. It's something that they need to do just to maintain great gut balance.
Okay.
And gut balance is like mental health. It's one of those things that you absolutely want to get control around. So products like Antonol, great for every day. Gut Protect, great for every day. There's other products that aren't even related to hers called Rose Hip Vital and stuff like that. Absolutely fantastic for dogs to be on every sort of day. But I know there's other people we need to talk about. If you want to learn more about Narelle's products, go to our website, canineseuticals.com. I think it's
You'll figure it out.
it's .com
Canine
or
Ceuticals.
.com.au. It's one of those.
No one
but-
types that shit anyway. Everyone just Googles it and
Yeah,
then goes,
just Google it.
yeah.
You'll find it.
Hey,
Yeah.
George Kittredge, I reckon we should get him on the show.
We should have George Kittredge on the show.
Yeah.
Not only is he devilishly handsome,
Yep.
but he's got a fantastic, one-of-a-kind product that I've never seen replicated anywhere in the world. You and me were getting a car ride by him. We got to see the prototype firsthand.
And then his bike got stolen with the prototype on it.
did.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, George has Rowdy Hound Dog Box. And
Yes.
so it's a crate that goes on the back of your motorbike so that your dog can go everywhere with you. And
Yeah.
it's cool as shit. It's a great idea. You should
Yeah.
totally get one. Tailored Canines in Canada.
Yeah,
Do you know that Taylor from Tailored Canines is hosting Jazz Whiting later in the year?
I do know that. Yes,
Yes.
I saw the ad. Very good.
Yep.
Not
So
only is she doing great stuff with her tailored canine,
her training business.
her training business, but she's also getting a fantastic trainer over there to help with her tailored training.
She is. And finally, Barbara de Groot
The sugar mama from the Heart Dog
From the
Training.
Heart Dog Training.
Just fucking throws cash at us.
Just supports the show. God bless her.
Yeah. I think later on in the year when Narelle and I are over doing a seminar with Melanie Benware, Barbara de Groot is coming over.
Wonderful.
I think she has put down a like, and I said, you better come, sugar mama, and she gave me a thumbs up. So hopefully she's going to be there and I can give her some love to repay us for all the kindness and support that she's thrown at us and ask nothing in return.
All right. That's our ad.
Yeah.
That one's good to go for at least another 4 years. You'll hear from us then. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart. I'm joined in studio today by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
Here we go. Ready for another one?
Should we just talk straight in?
Let's get straight into it.
We don't need to talk about Trump being assassinated or anything like
Should we?
that. No, we definitely don't.
I think enough people are talking about that.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, I've said it a couple of times on the show, and I've said it to plenty of people in IRL, in real life,
IRL. I love
IRL.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
that I have this plan,
Yep.
and it's a pretty loose plan. Like, I haven't sort of gone too deep into the details of it, but I have this sort of vision of how I would like to shape and manipulate the dog world in Australia, the working dog world, right?
Yep.
So when I say working dogs, I mean dogs with jobs, and especially jobs within the government, right? So detection dogs, police patrol dogs, special forces dogs, SWAT team dogs, the whole range of working dogs, right?
Can I derail this just slightly for a minute?
We've only just begun.
I know. Now that you're mentioning this, I did bring this up when Sean was here and we had a brief conversation around this, and it bolts onto your conversation in a way, because I really feel that what we need in this country, not just in this country, but all over the world, as you listen to conversations and you watch what people are talking about on social media, and that is decoy development, because it goes in line with developing this holistic program where you're talking about a resolution with producing the right type of dogs, importing the right amount of bloodlines, providing better breeding practices for working style dogs, et cetera, et cetera. That's all great. But if we still have issues with decoys not being developed properly, which was great that we had that decoy development camp, and you've been highlighting this over a period of time, because there's still a problem with decoys jamming dogs up, being too focused on their social media activity, that I do see that as a massive issue.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's part of my fix.
Let's go through your step-by-step program.
Yeah, so what I've talked about is that I have this loose plan, and the only thing holding me back from achieving it is money.
Yep.
I haven't costed it fully because I can't really do that. But as a sort of broad strokes, I think I could achieve what I want to achieve with about $30 million.
Yep.
Now, I know that there's people in their cars like, oh, only $30 million, Pat. But here's the thing. Money's not real, right? So for the government to spend money on infrastructure projects, that's where money comes from, right? So when we talk about how they've printed money or that there's new money coming to the economy or whatever, it's not that they literally print more money and that money comes into it. It's that they spend money into existence. And so governments spend money into existence via infrastructure projects. That's really how you get money into the economy.
That's why they say you've got to spend money to make money.
Yeah, that's how it goes within all the countries, especially now. We're not backed by any gold standard. Like, money's not real. It's completely fake. It's just ones and zeros. We've agreed to use this idea that this is our currency. So I learned this when I was working in the government, is that the costing of things is so strange. The Army has this thing called the ACMS, Army Capability Management Systems, where you get into like the back end of the budget, basically, and money is allocated around. And there's all kinds of silly things that exist within government in that money is put into different buckets and you can only draw from certain buckets in order to achieve certain things. For example, back at my old unit, capability is put into one bucket, and then that's broken into multiple buckets as well, but travel is another. So for example, if I wanted to do a course, right, if there was an instructor somewhere in the world, we used to get in a sniper instructor guy, right, who used to do supplemental training to the snipers within the unit. And so to bring him to Australia, to run a course, the course then has a certain cost per student, right? Like that's what he's going to charge. But it's cheaper for him to do that at his own facility in the US. The cost per student is lower. So it actually made more sense for us to send people to the US to do his course where we were paying less per student, but their travel and their hotel accommodation, all of that kind of stuff, and the incidentals because they get paid differently while they're there, that's from a different budget. And so for the person running the sniper cell, whose job it is to upskill snipers, his training budget is completely separate from his travel and whatever budget. That comes from a different pool of money. So you get kind of dumb things like that in the not just in the military, but in government all the time, right? And so when I say it's $30 million, at a minimum probably, right? I know that there's lots of people just going like, oh, that's ridiculous, but it's not. It's not even in the slightest. And $30 million to long-term solve what is actually quite a significant and looming problem that government is going to face in Australia that not too many people are really very aware of. You know, like I think that there isn't, to my knowledge, within the working groups, there isn't anybody highlighting to anybody who cares or fully understands the difficulty in getting dogs.
Even on last week's topic that we brought up, the fact that people aren't aware that the floor is not going to drop out of it, it's already starting to drop out of it now. That scarcity is already upon us.
Yeah, so we see this, say, in Victoria here in Australia where bite sports are banned, and we've talked about that, is that has significant effects because a lot of the breeding of dogs that are capable of police-type work, that's now limited to very few people because they don't have many customers now, right? So like if you as a breeder are breeding dogs suitable for that kind of thing, well, now you've only got security guys and the police who are interested in buying dogs. Now, you can never count on the police to buy anything from you because they have all these budgeting concerns and there's bureaucracy and all these kinds of things. So if you're relying on them to buy it to pay your bills, you're fucked because they're going to leave you high and dry. Not because there's any malice intent, but that's just the way that bureaucracy works, right? So there isn't a head of dog work within the Australian government that I'm aware of anyway. Yes, we have these conferences and there are times where, like they have these working dog groups that different government agencies will attend. And there was a time when I was at least even aware, if not peripherally involved in those things, but I'm not anymore. I'm a full-blown civilian now. Like aside from having been in the army 9 years ago, I'm not involved in any of that shit anymore, right? I'm sure that those kind of groups go ahead and I know that Army has a capability manager for dogs, but to my knowledge, there's nobody within the federal government who has like reach down or observation of the state of play of working dogs within the country.
The other limiting factor on that too is the incredible amount of washout of talent and all of the training, all of the history, all of the resources that they have gathered. As an outsider, it seems that very minimal goes into the next bunch of recruits that are coming through. And it seems to me that when you watch that, the loss of all that experience, that you're losing it within that new recruiting basis as well.
Yeah.
Now, that may be unfair. I might be saying, you and I were just having a conversation with Narelle's mum and dad before while they were here about how people have an expert viewpoint on things that they're not directly plugged into. And that might be a case here because I'm not directly plugged into Army logistics or police force logistics. I have friends and colleagues in there that talk to me about their budgetary frustrations and the fact that, like if they're given a pool of money to spend and the minister comes along and says, oh, you didn't spend all that. Well, that's what you're going to be short next year in next year's budget.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the case with most government departments, right? You don't spend your yearly allocation, it gets taken from you the next year. That's broadly speaking true. That's not like strictly linear.
That's why I'm saying I'm not really in the office there, so I can't say that I have fact on that.
Yeah.
It's just conversations I've had with frustrated people who say, we're short on the tools this year or we're short on the capability to buy these extra 3 dogs because last year we didn't meet the budget requirements because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And there is some truth to that because that's coming directly from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. This is part of the issue of larger government departments is there's a huge disconnect between end users, the people who we will actually interact with, and the people who sit behind computers and count the beans.
Absolutely.
Right? There's a huge disconnect there. I was really lucky when I was in the army. I had a really incredible mentor for a period of time. This guy, I won't say his name, he's still in, but he was my sergeant major in various roles across 2 different units. We moved together. I worked under him for roughly 4 years, right? He was sort of within my very direct chain of command. And he was an incredible mentor, actually, and taught me a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. When someone's going to join the army to be a clerk and be the like company clerk that does all the paperwork and stuff, he made me do their full training suite as though I was a new person who had just joined the army, and he made me go through, because you can do it online.
Wow.
He made me do their entire thing. And I was like, mate, I'm a gunfighter. I'm not a fucking clerk. I don't give a fuck about how to manually input somebody's qualifications into the system.
Yep.
But a couple of years later, when I don't have to rely on clerks to do anything for me because there's not enough of them, they're overworked, underpaid, all the same things. Now I can do that shit myself, right?
Yep.
And same as budgeting, like I don't have to go to the meetings to try and fight for the budgeting. I can get into the system and do it myself, right? So it was an incredible skill set that he forced me to acquire that I did not appreciate at the time. But then when I had it, I was like, oh, holy shit, this is incredible, right?
But
like,
it offers you insight as well sometimes. Right. And perspective is everything. As I alluded to before, there's often times where I've commented on things and I've had rage or I've had big feels about it, but I've had no real perspective on it. It's just a feeling, or, you know, like I'm siding with an ally when they have frustrations about it. But when you do have perspective on these things, when you are included in the actual conversation and you can see how, like the example I said before, when the floor is falling out of things because you don't have an allied group in those people who are doing the accounting, and then also allocate funds to you to be able to have that preparedness to do your job adequately, that's grossly unfair.
Yeah.
Grossly unfair.
Yeah.
And that's happening to a lot of our servicemen and women in dog units all over this country, where they're incredibly underfunded.
For sure, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So all of that is to help people understand that money's not real, and government money spending, $30 million is fucking nothing, right?
I agree with that, because there's plenty of times where
They're
our government's
wasting way more than that.
Absolutely. Friendly Geordies highlights it all the time. All the skeletons in their closet where they're trying to hide it, where they've funded money to their mates and funneled money here, there, and everywhere. He pulls it out and says there's hundreds of millions of dollars that are just being lost.
Exactly. What I want to do fits perfectly into the correct way that government spends money into existence. I want to spend a bunch of money. I want to do that mostly within Australia. So the money would stay here and just go into the economy. I want to employ a bunch of people, and I want to create a massive change. So I'm going to talk about how I want to do that. All right.
Cool.
So the first thing is that I want to point out is that I'm not sure that I want to do this. There's no ego involved in this. From here on out, whenever I say I'll be referring to myself as the person, because this is my vision. I'm happy to hand this vision over, right? But what's super, super, super important is that there is an enduring project manager throughout this, right? Now, that's one of the things that I cannot stress enough. And what we see in government roles is that everything is like stepping stone type jobs, right? It's rare that people are in a job for 10 years or more, right? Because they have ranks, there's careers that have to be highlighted. This is one of the things that people don't understand about, say, like special forces dog handlers, right? Nobody really wants to become a dog handler because it's a career killer, in that if you get too specialized at anything, it's very difficult to go back into the assault teams. And so nobody really wants to do that. It's like snipers is the worst, because if you as a digger get qualified, so digger, I mean like private, lowest rank, if you get qualified as a sniper and you're good at it, and you go into a sniper team and you spend the next 5-6 years in the sniper teams, and then you come back as a Lance Corporal junior leader to the assault teams, those assault teams don't want to fucking know you, because they're like, nah, mate, you've been sitting on rooftops. You're not an assaulter anymore. You've become that specialist thing. And the sniper platoon is like 30 guys, where the assault teams, there's hundreds of them.
Yep.
And so there's no career progression in snipers. Like the highest rank you can get to within snipers is the sniper platoon sergeant. That's it. You're done, right? So nobody wants to go into specialist roles because it destroys your career.
Right.
And so what's important to know about this is that this project must have an enduring project manager that sees it through.
100%.
So I'm happy
And
to...
with ethics as well. Otherwise, then you get pulled into the same pool that allegedly Greyhounds New South Wales is, because they're under the microscope at the moment, because allegedly their project manager has been favouring friends, according to Ray Hadley, where they've been misallocating funds to trainer buddies and all sorts of people in the industry.
Really?
Yes.
I'm not aware of all this.
That's why the role that you're talking about is pivotal in making something happen like this, because if you have someone who allegedly misappropriates funds to their friends and colleagues in the industry, then it all falls apart and it comes under scrutiny, and then you get held with the blame.
Yeah, to that end, what I will say is, though, this project manager, me,
Yep.
needs discretion to spend the money appropriately. And
Yes.
that's one of the issues. That's why these
As
sorts
long
of
as you have
things-
transparency in
Yeah,
it.
totally.
Yeah.
Total transparency,
Yeah.
right? But there needs to be that level of control over this, which is why it would be best done as private industry.
Yep.
And again, one of the reasons why I'm bothering to explain all of this and lay it all out is just in case somebody's like, hey, Pat, turns out I'm a secret billionaire and I like doing the right thing, and I see your vision and I want to make it happen. This is how I would make it happen.
Yep.
Okay. So it definitely needs a visionary, the person who will oversee the whole thing and want to see it through to completion. They need to be there throughout, right?
Yep.
As well as have the help that needed along the way. Okay. So that's established. Here's the first thing that needs to happen. I would first of all establish a bunch of committees of people. Now, those committees of people, again, let me take another minor step back. We're a little bit all over the place, but that is our style.
Yeah.
The reason our club is called Iron Fist PSA, the reason we named it that is because I feel like a lot of the time committees and working groups and too much of a linear hierarchy creates problems because it's a choke point, right? Imagine a narrow pathway that is your success. You need to go through that narrow pathway of success. That is why very pointy hierarchy systems work, because you have a person at the front who says, this is what we're fucking doing. I'll take all of your information in, I'll balance it all, I'll weigh it all against what I know. And the thing of hierarchies is that information trickles down that hierarchy, but not all of it goes down. So what you always have to remember when you're involved in any form of command and control hierarchy is that the people above you probably know more than you, right? And they're giving you the amount of information that you need to do your job so as not to burden you with more information than you need.
Yep.
And so there needs to be a very clear command and control at a central point above. But the next thing that needs to be done, and this is the first weakness that we'll encounter, is establishing committees of people to give their input.
If you heard Steve Jobs talking about the progression of Apple Corporation, how he didn't actually want to develop it as a group of committees, but more so that it was constantly viewed as a startup company ongoing. So he could have somebody responsible in each department.
Yeah.
Then they come together, they spend 4 to 5 hours once a week going through all the projects, where they are, where they're heading, where the funds have been allocated. And that way everybody in that department has got their neck on the block to make sure that their department is running as it should be.
Yep.
But he said in the funding and the managing and in speaking to colleagues in the industry, he said, I cannot stress a better way to do it than treat it as it's always a startup company.
It's important to know that while we are interested in the input of many people, we're going to weigh and balance that against the bigger picture. There will be a decision maker. The first sort of committee that I want to set up is people to talk about bloodlines and what bloodlines are, speak objectively and decide on what bloodlines from around the world we want to start to harness and how we're going to develop those, what ones we have here, what's available to us, and how we can get started. That's important to start figuring out. I think that one of the issues that we often face is that it's tricky because sometimes I think people lead each other astray because there can be differences of opinion on what is good and what is bad. That's a very objective thing. What kind of dog you like, what kind of dog you don't like, that's a very objective thing. But also people are financially incentivized because they're breeding particular things. They're interested in particular things. They have particular outcomes with these dogs.
And they're emotional.
Yeah, of course. So step one is that we're paying all these people for their information, right? You are financially incentivized to be successful in this. You're contributing to this. You're not financially incentivized to like get your particular bloodline going, right? You are financially incentivized because we're going to buy this knowledge from you. We're not expecting to get this from you for free.
How do you think people are going to feel about that, knowing that as a proposal of this, primarily what you're saying is I'm removing you from the capability?
In what way am I removing them from capability?
If you're saying I want to import another bloodline into the country, or I want to import a superior bloodline, which isn't your bloodline, how do you think they're going to feel about? All I'm playing is the devil's advocate in this, because I've spent plenty of time having late into the night conversations with people about bloodlines and genetics and understanding their pride, ego, and emotions that are involved in their own kennels, where some people are dead on. They know exactly what they're producing and they do. The proof is in the pudding. And some people are dead wrong, where their dogs couldn't pull the skin off a custard.
Yeah, that's why we'll have a committee of people that then, like, the people who are in any way obstructionist.
Yeah.
And of course, like, there should be heated debates. There should be differences of opinion.
Yeah.
But if anybody is seen to be obstructionist, then we remove them and they fall by the wayside, right?
Yep.
Like, they continue doing what they're doing, but they're not a part of this project. Why they should want to be a part of the project, despite potentially already being a dog breeder in Australia or whatever, is because, first of all, they have opportunities to be involved at the ground level of this as it grows. But second is that this running and being a thing that could potentially take away from their ability to sell dogs in the short to medium term doesn't exist. And that will become apparent soon, right? So we're not selling any of these dogs for a long time. I kind of established this idea. It seemed like I had a financial backer. Now, I won't go into the details of all that, but it turned out not to be the case. But I said to the person at the time, like, this is not a profitable business. You have to know that. And I was given the, like, well, I'm not interested. I want to do it. I have plenty of money. Money is not an issue for me. It's that I want to be involved in it. And so I was like, okay, cool. As long as you're aware that we ain't making any money. And that's why I think that this is not viable in Australia to do as private industry. If there's some level of intention of seeing a return on your money from an investor that said they were like, if someone called me and said, yeah, Pat, I'm in, I'll give you the money, but this is how I want to see a return. I'm like, no, there will be no return. We are losing money on this.
So primarily what you're suggesting, if I'm correct, thinking along the bouncing ball, is that you feel that this should be government funded and in wages paid by the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
Gotcha.
if it's not government funded, then it's a private backer that doesn't want the return. Right. I know that seems like a weird thing to say, but that shit happens, man. That happens for real.
Look, I understand there's sultans and there's sheikhs out there who do fun things like this.
And not just that. Here's an example. When I was at the college that I attended for a semester in the US, one of the astrophysicists was talking about a thing that she was on the verge of, discovering, I suppose, but was going to take a huge amount of money, and mostly that money was in telescope time, because there was only a couple of different telescopes. I think there's 2 on the planet that could do what you want to do, and you have to bid for the time to use those because everybody wants to use them at the times when they'll see that's capable of seeing the things. And said that, like, it'd cost $150 million to do what I want, and the guy wrote her a check on the spot. And so these things happen.
With no hook.
No, you achieve that goal, because when she achieves what she's trying to achieve, I remember her name, and I think that she's actually done it, but no one else will, because it was done by the Yale Astrophysics Department.
But I'm a suspicious motherfucker of people, because I just know that most people follow the narrative of Whiffam. What's in it for me?
Yeah, for sure. But there is a return for them. But the return to that guy in that instance was that Yale will make the discovery.
Was it his money or Yale's money?
It's his money that he donated to Yale in order to have the discovery made by Yale, and then the Yale brand, that he's got a giant company that only employs Yalees.
Yep.
Right? The stock of Yale increases.
Ah, right.
And
I get it. So he gets a funnel out of it.
Yeah, well, no. So his company that's full of Yale employees is
first pick.
Not
there's
just
something.
that.
There's something.
Yeah, but the whole brand of the Yale brand would have increased because they will be the discoverer of the thing. And so to him, giving them the opportunity to make a groundbreaking discovery that will be attributed to the university that he went to and that he only employs people from is worth his while to spend that $150 million.
And you know that for a fact? This is just my suspicion.
No,
I'm just
no, I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, I'm not trying to poke holes in your story.
What do you mean? Do I know that for a fact? I'm telling the story that she told me.
My reason for asking is, like I said before, I'm suspicious of people's generosity.
Of course, there has to be something in it for them.
Yeah.
It's maybe that what's in it for them is that there's the achieving of a particular thing.
Okay.
But that happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not expecting my phone to ring after this. But what I'm saying is this is not as ridiculous as people think. This kind of shit happens all the time. You know that there was I can't remember the guy's name. I should have been better prepared. I didn't know we were going to discuss this. But there was an astronaut, I can't remember his fucking name, that one of the telescopes in space that will identify a meteor that's going to hit us. And he gave a speech at Google. And
the James Webb telescope?
No, it's a different one. But he gave a speech at Google saying that we really don't have very good defense against knowing whether we're going to get hit by an asteroid or a comet or whatever.
Yep.
Because there's so much space that we're not covering and we're overdue for a big impact. And so, you know, he gave this very, I suppose, pessimistic speech about how we're not doing the things and NASA doesn't have funding for it to get that because they're more into exploration, not just observation. And it would probably only cost $500 million. And a guy that he gave the speech to at Google came up to him and said, mate, we can raise $500 million in no fucking time. There's people that will donate to this, right? Mm-hmm. Like we can easily do this. And they did within a couple of weeks of knowing the right people to call to say like, hey, we want to do this.
Yeah, there's money in startups and everything.
We can't get bogged
like
down by this. But the point is, it's not a ridiculous thing.
Cool.
Okay.
So
we're
next
going
point.
to establish these working groups where we're going to establish the bloodlines. We're going to identify the locations.
Yep.
So in Australia, we've got like 7 states. I want to put a location in each one. This is the biggest cost, right? Is that I want to identify the locations where these places will be and build the facilities.
Yep.
And the facilities will need to be super high end working dog facilities. I'm talking triple stage kennels, training facilities, training grounds, offices, working places, education spaces. So this is the biggest cost. Without a doubt, this is the biggest cost.
Yeah,
right?
land and bricks and mortar are expensive.
Again, why if it were funded by government, it's not a cost at all.
Yep.
Right? Because now we're employing people to do these things. It's just creating ones and zeros that go into the economy. We're employing companies. We're employing workers. There's people there that are creating, like the infrastructure build out is just creating jobs within the country.
And it goes back to our states and territory and national defense as well.
Exactly. So we start establishing locations. We start building committees of people who can run the build out of that. People like you who are experts in the way a kennel should run. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, like I don't need to go to all the conventions where they show where all of the latest and greatest in kennel layouts, because you've done that shit, right? So I can buy that information from you. And so I can have working groups within Australia. I can bring in people from around the world because I can pay them because I've got the money to do this. And we start identifying how are we going to build these things properly, right? Because these need to be done properly. And then we have statisticians and logistics people that go over and help me flesh out this entire plan to be more like cross all the T's and dot all the I's, right? So this is a bigger picture thing, but we need to then get more into the weeds on deliverables, at what time we're going to hit, like what are our KPIs, where are we going to hit them, how are we going to hit them, how are we going to measure our success against our failure, that kind of stuff. We need to figure all that out. Okay. Straight away, we can start going and buying dogs. Mm-hmm. So we identify the kind of bloodlines that we want to get, and what we want to do is bring in a variety of different bloodlines. So it's not that we want one particular, that we're going hard in the paint after a particular thing. We're going to identify a bunch of different ones. Now, how many, I don't know yet, and where they're all going to come from, I don't know yet. But what that looks like is we're going to have to pay, right? So whether we're importing the dogs from overseas or we're buying them here, proven lines, mostly what we want is to mitigate how much risk we're taking and buy proven lines from bitches who have produced. Because those are the kind of dogs that people don't part with, right? So like the answer when people say to me, you know, like, because lots of people have said to me, oh, I want to import a dog, you know, like to get a bloodline, start breeding, whatever. Like you can't really do it because for us to import a dog as a puppy, you got to buy that dog as a puppy. And that's the only way that you can guarantee you're going to be able to buy the dog. You buy it new, right? First-hand dog. Then it's 10 months old before it can come into the country. You don't know whether it's going to pan out. You might have bought the right bloodline.
That's massive risk.
There's huge amount of risk.
Massive risk.
Right? So I don't want to take those risks. I want to hit the ground running. I want to identify. I want to go to somewhere and be like, hey, I can't help but notice you've repeated the same mating twice. Everybody's happy with the puppies. We'd like to if not buy an entire litter of your dogs, we want to buy that bitch and we want to bring her out to Australia and we're going to start breeding from her here. And we're going to buy also semen from you because we want to pick up the bloodline and bring it over. We don't want some like hodgepodge disaster of outcross. We want to pick up what you have and bring it here. Mm-hmm. Now that's going to cost, right? People
of course it's going to cost. Yep.
No worries. We've got $30 million.
Yep. I mean, already there's millions of dollars just in dogs and semen in that.
Yep. Probably $1 million. Or roughly. But anyway, it depends on lots of different stuff.
I reckon 2 to 3.
Well, it depends on how many we're bringing in. Depends on like lots of stuff, right?
Are we limiting this to biting dogs or are we talking detection dogs as well?
I think that my primary focus is on the biting dogs because that's where our biggest problem is. I think that in Australia we have some really good detection dogs and people are reliably breeding the kind of dog. But no, they are, but it's whether people are finding them because there's plenty of good gun dogs being bred, right, that are totally suitable as detection dogs. It's whether people are putting their hands on them. But I don't know that we need to import. I don't know, right? So this is the thing. Like, I don't know that we need to.
The reason I'm asking this is like you're setting this up as a national standard, which already addresses, if you're looking at it from a welfare and an ethics point of view, it already addresses a national standard. So then they can come along and saying, well, I'm concerned about how the female will be looked after in whelp. I'm concerned with how the puppies are going to be raised. It's already addressed. Your model should already put it into place and you'll employ someone as an ethics controller or an ethics manager who basically...
Well, there'll be a HR department.
Exactly. Somebody who addresses all the roles and concerns and puts it into place. So what their job is to introduce best practices along the way.
We're getting to that. So the first thing that we're doing is we're importing these dogs, right? And we're establishing the bloodlines. Now that's a 12-month project at the minimum, right? Because even if suddenly the ones and zeros appeared in my bank account today, we still have to go through all the quarantine and everything. There's no way around that, right?
Yep.
Now,
but mate, you want to be building, you want infrastructure to happen
straight away.
Happening.
Yeah, straight away. So this is all concurrent. We've got the building of the facilities happening within Australia.
Yep.
And then we've got people out buying the dogs and we've got the dogs in quarantine, right? We potentially have people who are overseas. If we don't have trusted partners where we have those dogs, we potentially have people in those places raising the dogs. We can co-locate all the dogs from around the world mostly to one place and they can all do their quarantine time in one particular place before they all come out together. So we can put staff in one particular place to look after a bunch of dogs.
Yep.
So we're bringing those dogs into Australia. We're building the facilities as per the spec of what we've decided to do. The next thing that we start doing is identifying and training the staff who are going to be dealing with all of this when they arrive.
Yep.
So our initial pool of staff are going to be people that you and I know, right, from within the space that we know have the skill set to immediately start making good, right?
Yep.
And we're going to pay them enough that it's worth their while to do it, right? The thing is, with all of this, we're not expecting anybody. Like, one of the reasons why I think so many of the grand plans that people have in training people and developing bloodlines and all this kind of shit, it doesn't work out. It's because people have to feed their family. At the end of the day, people have to make enough money to sustain themselves.
Absolutely. They need to be paid adequately for the job that they've been pulled away or headhunted for.
That's right. And so, breeding dogs is a terrible business model. Unless you're just puppy farming shit dogs, then you can make a fortune. But if you're looking to produce something special, that doesn't happen easily, and you can lose a whole litter. You can have a mating not take. Like, there's lots of different ways that things can go wrong.
So now I need to poke a question at you. And hopefully you've had time to think about this, because this will be a question because it comes up in greyhounds. It comes up in a lot of these circles.
We're going to get to the excess dogs. We're going to get to what happens with the dogs that don't pan out.
Great.
There's a whole plan on that.
Okay, good. So, I'm glad you thought that through, because that's where they pull the pin on this grenade.
Yep. So right now, all we've done is establish what bloodlines we want to get. We've gone and bought those dogs, and those dogs are in quarantine.
Okay.
We've also bought some of the dogs that are within Australia, and we've got those dogs in facilities. We're ready to go.
Yep.
We are building out the facilities, and whether we're putting one in every state or just in key states, I'm not sure, but we are building those facilities, and they are going to be not identical, but they're going to be very similar, right? Like, there isn't going to be one that's better than the others. They're all going to be capable of doing the same shit. They're going to be the same size, roughly. They're all capable of doing the same shit. Even though later they're going to service different markets. But the point is, we're moving these things around so that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket.
Would you be open to crowdfunding?
Yeah, for sure. If people wanted to put in the money, I'm open to all kinds of funding.
If you're looking at this as a project and something that's sustainable and it warrants growth, and you could attract, the contracts from state, territory and federal governments to primarily fix the hole in the bucket who cares where the finances come
No,
from?
exactly. The main thing is, as long as the decision-making person, who I'm referring to as myself, but like I'm saying, it could be many people. It doesn't have to be me.
Why would you outsource it if you've come up with this and you've drafted?
Well, because maybe I don't want to do it. But this is a lot of work.
It is. It is a lot of work, but it's something that would sustain.
Yeah. Jokes aside, if somebody said, hey, I have the money to do this, you can do it, I would do it. But again, this is part of it. My business would die. I'm happy to do that because I do my business in order to achieve, like I will achieve more of what I'm trying to achieve in my life.
But this is a level up.
Yeah, that's right. But the pay would have, like this is a big part of it. We've got to pay people well, because if I'm going to put my whole business off, I would basically have to shut down everything I do.
Yep.
And to do this, I need to be compensated for that.
100%. I don't disagree.
But so does everybody at every stage in this. So we're paying people well throughout this whole thing in order to make sure that we attract the right people.
And they want to stay.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
It is that not only do we need the right people to want the job, but we need people to want to keep their job and continue to be team players in the development of this, right? Because we're paying them so much that they couldn't make that money anywhere else.
Yep.
So we've got the facilities being built.
Yep.
We've got the dogs overseas. We start training people immediately.
Yeah.
Now,
immediately. Yep.
What that looks like is we start running trainer schools. And now we're going to be training people who are not just interested in it, but they're the ones who want to like see the vision through. And we're employing people. Like, let me throw out some names.
And also, now that I'm thinking about this, you can also provide them with an accreditation. So they actually get to obtain a skill set and hold an accreditation that will follow them whether they choose to stay or go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
We then say to people, and let me throw out, like, let me use Ben Gertz as an example, right? Ben's definitely one of the people that I approach. He performs a similar function to this, like in his own scale.
Yep.
Ben's a great trainer, does his own thing, but he's in Perth, right? So he's a person that I say, hey, Ben.
You're running my Perth operations.
Well, I want you. Do you want to do it? Now, let's assume that he's happy with the amount of money that we can pay him to do it.
Yep.
And he's like, fuck yeah, I'm in. Okay, cool. I'm not running one of them. I'm overseeing it. I'm a project manager of the whole thing. We have, and let's just say it's going to be you here. For whatever reason, you've quit your job and you're here, right? You're doing the New South Wales one. We've got people in Melbourne, Queensland, all the places. What we do is we start having these coordinated training sessions so that all these people, there's a big flight budget, right? We get together at the various facilities that we're now building, and until they're ready, we start doing it wherever we do it. But we start cross-leveling the training and we upskill everybody as much as possible. You here start running like, hey, this is how I want to do things. This is how I think of training dogs. We run these concentrations. Maybe they're weekend things that happen every month so that you're constantly training your staff here, but then everybody comes together, or a selected number, because people have to run the kennels and whatever, but selected number of people are constantly coming together to cross-load information, all right? Then when the dogs start arriving, we then allocate them around the country, because we're only, say we bring in 10 different dogs, 10 different bloodlines, or maybe it's 5 bloodlines with 2 of each, whatever we decide on. This is, effect of the working group that figures out. We then put those around, we start breeding. Now, we don't sell, give away, part ways with any of the dogs for probably 10 years. Right? This is that we are developing real bloodlines. So these kennels, this is one of the reasons why it's so difficult, is they're huge, because we have to be able to keep whole litters, and we have to be able to see like what happens over time here, because we're trying to establish proper bloodlines that has never been established in Australia. We want to look and see like, okay, this puppy, and we're recording all of this, right? Like there's so much availability of this sort of data in this kind of facilities.
Universities could get in this as well.
100%. We could study, like there's plenty of room for this to be.
People could do thesis, PhDs.
Exactly.
Like it's got scope for all of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we start breeding these dogs, and we have now these meetings maybe go from monthly to quarterly or something like that. But the facility heads, guided by the project manager, meet regularly. Now, maybe that's in person, maybe that's a weekly meeting, Zoom call, whatever, where we talk about where we're at, how things are panning out, and we can show the video. We've got all the data, and so like this is how these dogs are developing. This is what we're seeing. This is what we're encountering. We like this, we don't like this. And we're watching this over time and seeing like these puppies that show us particular traits at a young age, are we seeing that turn into something at 2 years old? And when we repeat that mating, are we seeing the same thing? Is that something that we can rely on? Can we understand that? And what we're also doing along the way is we're reallocating these dogs so that although the dogs are at a particular facility, they're not your dogs. They're the project's dogs. And we're moving them around because you and Ben, again, to use you guys as an example, you're going to have slightly different things that you do. You're going to have different things. And even though you're both on the same mission, you both share the same vision, and you're both being guided by the same inputs, you're still going to do things differently. That's the beauty of being different. Your variables. You're different people.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see the bloodline that landed over there, that's going really well for them. But I'll give us a couple of those at the next mating, put them over here and see how they go with you, right? See how like all this effect has of that.
Different climates. All sorts of things.
In the meantime, we're still doing these big connected training days, right? Where we use the facilities at each one, and maybe that looks like we bring a bunch of dogs. Maybe we fly them in, we drive them however they get to the places, but the dogs come with a bunch of their handlers, and we start cross-leveling, and we show like, hey, this is where we're at with these dogs. These are the problems we're encountering. Seems to be fairly uniform across the litter. So we start getting to really understand these things. And over time, and when I say over time, I'm talking 5 to 10 years before we have any real relevant data. We then start to get a pretty fucking good understanding of like what works and what doesn't, what adapts well to certain training techniques. When we put different bloodlines together, what happens? And we've got oversight of all of this by people who we're not trying to convince anyone of anything. The main thing of this is everybody's being paid to do the work rather than sell any of these dogs. These dogs are staying in the facilities. We have within the facilities, we have people that live there. We have kennels, but we have house setups where some of the dogs are going to be raised to feel like they're someone's pet and they're going to live in the house with someone, and we're going to see, are they capable of that? Are they not? Because that's an interesting data point. Doesn't mean that they're good or bad or otherwise, but it's a data point that we need.
How does it affect the outcome?
Yeah, how does that affect? And so these guys that, once we know, okay, we're reliably breeding similar dogs, we raise them differently and we see, okay, what happens here? Because when you're out crossing dogs and then you raise them differently, that's not data in any way, shape or form, because they could be fucking completely different dogs. The way that one reacts to being raised in a house versus in a kennel is of no use if they're not similar dogs genetically, or like similarly spirited dogs rather than just brothers that are completely different dogs.
Yeah.
So we've got facilities all around the place. We're breeding dogs in all these different facilities. We're meeting regularly for concentrated training days where we are upskilling everybody. And the goal is at the upper levels, the sort of management of those facilities, I want long-term staff, right? I want people who are going to be in that job for a long time.
Yep.
In the mid sort of management, the trainer level, I want people who are there for a few years at the least. I want them getting their skills definitely ticked up.
Yep.
But they're going to be learning so much about dogs and behavior, and they're going to get so good on the tools that I want those people then going like, you know what, I can go out into private industry. And
that's what I'm saying. If they get accreditation, there's so much upside for them.
Yeah. And our kennel techs, our basic trainers, not our supervisor level trainers, but our actual normal trainers, I want a high turnover of those. I don't want them in the job for a really long period of time. Of course, they can be. They can work their way through the whole thing and go from one to the other. There's a career progression within there for them. But I want those people turning over because they're our staff that are now training the rest of the people around the country. They're people who spend 6, 12 months with us doing this stuff, getting a really high skill set in dog training in general. And then they're the ones that are going into people's homes doing behavior modification, getting jobs in places like this at kennels that train pets.
Yeah. Because they've got behavioral knowledge. They understand how to care and medicate and
all the stuff.
Everything. And the invaluable thing of that as well is a lot of kennels don't have people that have got experience with dogs that have got high drives.
Yeah.
So then you're already plugging somebody in who can come in as a senior leadership role that can come in and say, yep, I've dealt with dogs at this caliber. I've looked after them. I've done all the husbandry. I've done the medications. Yeah, fantastic. Amazing.
Staff within these facilities are going to be encouraged to take a particular dog. The dog will always remain owned by the facility until we get enough data on them to the point where they're like, okay, we know everything we need to know about these dogs. They're 3, 4 years old. You can have it if you want it, right? But in the meantime, they live in the facility, but they potentially go home with staff members if that's what they want, right? And I want to encourage those staff members to do things with those dogs so they can compete with the dogs and they can compete. We will grow dog sport like fucking crazy and a bunch of them. Obviously, I want to push PSA
But it's
because
a great crossover as well because
That's right.
the PSA dog can go straight into industry.
Yep. But we wanted dogs doing IGP. If people are more interested in doing Mondio, we want to grow all that because now like the biggest bottleneck that we have to those kind of sports existing is people that want to play them. No, that's not true. There's plenty of people who want to play them. It's people who have the ability to have a dog that's capable of doing it, live in a living situation where they can keep that kind of dog and have access to other people who can help them do it, i.e. decoys, a club, all that kind of shit.
And have a GP dog with a recall.
Yeah. So these facilities solve all of those problems. So we're growing dog sport like fucking crazy, right? Like, and we are using these dogs and that's our testing ground. We're then putting them into the test. Tools come off. Let's see the dog on the field. We're doing all these sorts of things. At a certain point, we're going to reach the place where we're going to start placing dogs. And it's what we're going to do is the adult dogs who are raised, trained, sold, we're going to, or raised, trained, ready, we're going to start placing them in various roles. Now, those roles look like police and military roles. Those roles look like, detection, if that's what we're doing. We're going to be going to corrections. We're going to also, and this is one of the reasons why there needs to be a decision maker who can do the things. It's exactly sort of as you've alluded to with the Greyhound stuff, is that there needs to be a person, and again, I feel like I embody this, but it needs to be a person who sees the vision of it and their decisions are questioned only in how successful they'll be, not what kickbacks they got from it.
Well, knowing the moral compass of you, as I have for many years, I would completely trust you with it.
I want to do
I know you
this.
would call yourself out
But I want to be able to place a dog with someone and not be questioned over it. So I want someone to turn up and you're like a person who's not within it, or maybe they're an employee that's left, whatever.
Yep.
And I go, no, you've got the skill set.
Yep.
Like you take this dog.
Yeah,
like,
I know how much skin you would have in this and how important it would be to you. Let's include ego in this. For your ego to be able to sit still at night and be comfortable, or not, let's not call it your ego, but your soul to be not restless about this. I know how important it would be to you to pull it off and make sure that there's transparency and clean execution in this.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that what's super important for whoever runs that is that they're transparent in what they do, but you can't influence what I do. Like I'm doing that. If I decide I'm giving 10 of these dogs to someone to see what they do with them, I'm fucking doing that. I'll tell you that's what's happening and I'll explain why and I'll give you the bigger picture on why I think it's a worthwhile investment to the project. But what there can't be is a person going, oh, but he's your mate. I'm like, yeah, no shit. He's my friend. That's why I know him. That's why I have the level of because that's the problem with a lot of these things is that people, certainly in government departments, like this is an interesting thing, say of my own old unit, is that now I'm so far gone from the unit that there's a lot of people who never knew me there who are now in like senior executive positions. And they look and they go, why are we employing this guy who's a former unit member? And they can go, well, this reeks of fucking corruption because the boys are just looking after him. And that definitely from the outside is totally fair thing to think.
Yeah, you should be able to ask that question.
Yeah, but we go, no, the reason he's here is because we know him, we know and trust him, and he has the skill set.
Here's his skill set.
Here's the skill set. So that's how it needs to be.
Here is the resume that you are unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do all that. Now we've got super skilled people because we're constantly meeting, we're cross-leveling. We're not only moving the dogs around, we're moving staff where that's possible and appropriate. Now, aware that means people are moving around, but a lot of these facilities have live-in capability at them, right? Because we need to be doing that. We've got kennels full of dogs, right? People have to live there all the time. And before too long, we're going to have 150 dogs at one of the places. There's going to need to be multiple people that live at the premises.
Yep.
So we can start moving people around who are willing to do that and cross-leveling skill sets, cross-leveling dogs, and massively increasing the quality of the average dog trainer around the country by putting back into the dog space these people. Now, we will be holding events, we'll be upskilling people who are outside of the organization.
Seminars,
all of
it. Yep.
All of that. Then eventually we get to the point where we're raising and training these dogs.
How does it regenerate profit?
We're getting to that.
Okay, cool.
At a certain point, we start placing the dogs in units and we're giving them to them. Right? We're giving them to these units and saying like, this is our dog. Now, the legalities around this get tricky, but however it looks, we place the dogs with people and go, we are giving you this dog on the premise that we stay very up to date with what happens with this dog.
Yep.
We want to know everything about what happens, judgment free. This is not to ridicule your training or whatever.
It's just to find out what happens in the field.
What happens? We need to know how well the dog engages. We need to know how well does it go in tracking, like how does it play out, and without judgment. We're not planning on blaming you for anything. If there's a hole in your training and you know it or you want that plugged, come to us. We'll happily plug that.
It's research.
That's what we need to know what's going on. We eventually get to the point where we maybe identify that maybe this bloodline didn't pan out. There's a health issue. Fuck. We didn't know about that. It's come to the surface now. Or these ones turn out to be too spicy. They come back at the handlers, right? There's lots of different things. So we start going, okay, we're not going to continue with that one. We're going to cross level and we're going to like push that one out. So that I would think that 10 years later, we should have a pretty good visibility on probably 3 different styles of dogs that we like.
So what are you going to call this? Gattaca kennels?
Something like that. We then get to the point where now we can start looking that perhaps we start selling these dogs to public. Now people, rather than people who are part of our organization, now we can start to potentially sell them. And we start looking at how that's going to go. That takes a new, different structure. That's a different team. The end goal of this whole thing is that we have identified people along the way who are bought in, right? Like they're in on the project, they want to do it. And we eventually get to the point. Now, I don't know the timeline on this. It might be 15 years, it might be 20 years. But again, that's small numbers when you're talking massive infrastructure projects, which this is. We then eventually get to the point where if this is government funded, then we get to the point where we go, all right, you, Glenn, can take a lease on the premises that we own. That lease will be like a 99-year lease, like you essentially own it and it'll be at no cost, but we can kick you out if you're, in proprietary, whatever, like that's how it will work.
Yep.
On the same day, we've been cross-loading everybody. We've been getting everybody to these same points. On the same day, the gloves come off. We're no longer a government department. Use is now a functioning business for you, but it has been built. The facility is there, right? You've got the bloodlines working. All the risk is gone in that way. We've cross-leveled everything. Everybody's at an even playing field. It's now up to you to turn this into a functioning business that continues to do the same. Now, how long it takes to get to that point, I don't know.
Yep.
And how viable that last step is, I'm not 100%. That's so far down the line that I don't know.
How many facilities do you say you need?
1 per state. But at the minimum, I think that you'd need 5. Like I think you'd need
more than $30 million.
Yeah. It depends on, so I agree, but it depends on how we're costing things. Like, are we paying for every dollar ourselves or like are the facilities?
The purpose-built facilities, you wouldn't get much change out of $5 million.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting. $5 million per. But then if it were government funded, like I was saying, money comes from different places. So the infrastructure build out might not be a cost of ours.
Yep.
Running costs might be. It depends on how these sorts of things are established. But that's the plan. The plan is, as a simple recap, is that we build the places, we train the people, we bring in the dogs, we work cohesively together under one center management that make sure the project as a whole is successful. We continue to cross-level, cross-train, test, adjust, go ahead. And at the minimum, I think that it would turn Australia from a place that's like, it can be hard to put your hands on the right dogs to we'll be exporting dogs. We'd be the home.
Yeah, I agree.
If there was the level of input that I want to do with this is that not only would we solve our own internal problem, we would become vendors to the rest of the world for the same thing. Because to my knowledge, there isn't anywhere that has a project this big that is being run in this way.
Just to throw the cat amongst the pigeons, let's say somebody listened to this podcast and said, great idea, love it, here's $50 million, but you got to do it offshore. Don't want to do it in Australia.
There's not really any point. I'm trying to solve our dog problem.
Cool. Okay. All right. That's one hole plugged.
Where do they want to do it?
Well, it could be the Sultan of Brunei might say, I'm prepared to fund you. Cash is unlimited, but you got to do it in Brunei.
Nah, without speaking out of school, I've been offered blank check jobs around the world and I'm not interested.
Yep.
This is my home.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I haven't been offered blank check jobs, but I've been offered roles in other countries, even though it suited me, it didn't suit Narelle.
Yeah.
So, and I agree, there's no place like home.
Yeah.
Plus, with what you're talking about, you need to understand the backstory of who's going to be brought into it. And we have that in Australia.
That's right. Yeah.
Whereas if you're starting elsewhere, it's all grassroots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things about this is the vision of the success at the end. So like people who don't like each other, but if you have the skill set, I'm employing you. If you've got the skill set, I'm employing you because I need those skills. And I'm going to pay you what you're worth to pass those skills on to other people or to help train or perform the function that you can train. Like that's important, I think, in this, is that there's got to be a like, no, I'm working towards a vision of this. And personalities aside, like I'm getting it done. And money is what solves all of that. You know what I mean?
Not always.
Not always, but for the most part, money is what solves a lot of those issues. When people say, I don't want to work with that guy, and you go, hey, this is how much I'll pay you. They go, I'll work with him, no problem, right? Because we're going to use people for what they can provide us. And this is the vision that I have for it. I think it's worth pointing out for people who are still listening, in Australia, big working dog kennels don't exist. There's a few small people trying to pull it off and they're doing their bits and pieces.
Yeah, we don't have vendors and we don't have executors.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
It's not a big thing. It's not a big viable business for many reasons. But to start doing it now, the main reason is the cost of the facility.
Yep.
So you won't get a return.
Real estate in Australia is like horrendously expensive.
Yeah.
And I think metropolitan Sydney prices are the second highest in the world.
Yeah. And so the cost of the facility, the cost of the wages along the way to do it, like it's not a viable business. But potentially, if when we build it up, like when it's running, it could be a profitable business to run, but you could not build it and recover your costs. That will never happen. But if when it were running, then we said, okay, we're cutting off your funding and you have to make your own money, that's viable. If the facility is built, the dogs are in, the clients are there ready to buy dogs, it's a viable thing to keep running. But what we don't have is facilities that do it. What doesn't happen in Australia is that police and military don't send their handlers out for their handler courses. They run them internally. So that changes the way that dog work happens and the level to which dogs are trained before they're sold. That affects that because they don't want a dog with too much training because the handler has to learn to train that dog on his course. And so the idea of that you train the dog to a standard, then the handler comes in and you do the handover over a 6-week period with your handler course or whatever it is, that doesn't happen here like that happens in many other places in the world.
Yeah.
We don't have big schools where you can go and spend 6-12 months and get your hands on a ton of dogs and be learning shit tons along the way. We don't really have that, you know. In doing this project, the whole dog industry changes. It's hyper niche. It is hyper niche because I'm talking about the working dog end of it. But I promise you, if you want to do in-home behavior mod, you spend 12 months at a place like that, you understand in-home behavior mod better than fucking most people out there. You are an accomplished dog person. And when you've been getting those kind of dogs and training them all day and dealing with the issues that come of those kind of dogs and all the things that we'll be dealing with, you are a very accomplished dog trainer to then go into work in a facility doing board and trains or working for yourself doing in-home behavior mod or whatever you want to do after that.
Mate, I can't express the gratitude I have for people like Boyd who gave me a leg up in the industry by teaching me to teach protection and law enforcement dogs. It gave me a massive leg up above other people in the industry who were doing pet dog training. Not only did I understand pet dog training, but I understood it from multiple different levels and applications where I could deal with dogs that other people were unprepared to work with, wouldn't work with by choice, or had zero skills to be able to execute it. Understanding the application of dogs with potential in drives, scent detection dogs, you're at a massive advantage to anybody in the industry because you have a skill set unmatched by 95% of the dog training population.
Yeah.
Unmatched.
For sure. And so they're the people that we'll be churning out and putting back into the community.
I had my birthday the other day. I turned 54 years old. Even at my age now, I'm still getting called round to kennels to pull aggressive dogs out because the staff that work with them, and this is not a blight on my staff, I'm not having a go at them. Some of these people are very new and they shouldn't be touching these dogs and they do the right thing, but I'm still pulling the dogs out of the kennels for them. And this is why I say to people when I have a scorn about people in the industry who are doing aggression consultation work, they sit in an office talking about it or prescribing meds for the dogs, but have no real practical application. This would solve that.
Yeah, for sure.
This would absolutely solve that.
For sure.
The more you're talking about this, the more on board I am with it.
There's so many different cool things that can come of it.
It-
Like you want to do a long-term study on behavioral training and how it goes? No worries.
That's what I'm saying. Your entire university thesis, your PhD could be, you come along from one of the institutes and say, hey, I've got a team of people who want to study the behavioral analysis of these dogs.
Yep.
And also be able to train your staff, run conferences and so forth on what we're actually seeing. The entire network comes in, an internal conference happens where we say, hey, we've got the MIT of canine behavior.
Yep.
Here to present their findings to us. They've been spending the last 18 months watching the development of these puppies, these females along the way, and they're going to upskill us in the knowledge of what we're actually doing.
Yeah, and you could run full long-term studies on, okay, here's a litter of dogs.
Yep.
There's 10 of them. Let's cut them into quarters, not literally.
Yeah.
But we then go, all right, these few are going to be raised with this kind of training method. These few are going to be raised with this. These few are going to be raised with this. 2 years later, let's see where they're at. And we've got the same people training them because we've cross-loaded these. Like, it's not like I'm wed to this is how I do things. It's the people who are there are like, hey, man, I want this to achieve. So if you tell me to train these 2 dogs with a particular method and then these 2 dogs with a different method and see which one pans out, my job is to see how it goes, not be successful with either. So I don't have a bias as to how this pans out. I would want the data so that on the next litter of dogs, we know the best way to do it, right? And so I think that's the sort of data that we don't have.
It's invaluable.
Yeah.
It's invaluable.
And the scaling of this thing, like I imagine it at the biggest scale and I explain it at the biggest scale. But the truth is, even if it were just one facility, it would still be worthwhile doing, right? Like even if the phone rings and someone says, hey, Pat, I've done the actual costings on this and $30 million is only going to get you one of these places and run it for that long, it's still worth doing because we can do all the same shit. We're just not going to have as much redundancy as if we do it at a bigger scale.
Well, you can template it too. Like once you sort of iron out the kinks, then hopefully somebody will want to further invest and say, now that you've got the prototype underway and you've developed this template, now that you've done that, I'm willing to expand it into other states.
Yeah, so you've got one in Sydney. It's humming along.
Yep.
Let's build another one in Perth.
Yep.
Right? And so like it doesn't have to be all at once.
So we can do east and west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, it's what I keep coming back to, is that it has to have a decision maker. There has to be a person who is only wed to the success of it. And that's why like I see this as a vision. And again, I want to explain like if my phone rang, there's no chance it's happening. But if my phone rang and someone said, hey, I'm backing this thing, but you have to run it, I would do it.
Yep.
But if it went to tender, like if the government decided, if somebody in the background is working on this or a better plan and they're looking for a person to run it, I'm not volunteering. Like I'm very happy what I'm doing, but it has to have a head. It has to have a person who makes all these decisions and is paid a salary regardless of how it goes.
Yep.
So that
and doesn't end up on the Ray Hadley show.
Yeah. But so their salary is not conditional on anybody else's influence. It's that they're just working towards success and they're allowed to make decisions that assist in doing that.
Yeah.
But mate, I think that it would be cool. And like I say, like it's a pipe dream. It's something that I've had in my mind for a long time. I obviously have much more sort of detail in my mind than we're sort of going into as we waffle here. But there needs to be more detail put into it.
Oh, hell yeah. This is just mud
It's just
mapping.
a high level.
It's just sketching it out.
And every time I mention this, there's always people that scoff at the money, but then there's other people who know what I know about this kind of thing that are like, yeah, totally feasible. Like you're in the right place at the right time, got the ear of the right person.
Yeah.
Totally feasible.
Mate, there's been plenty of projects who multiples and multiples of millions have been tipped into them.
Yep. And like I said, it could be a private backer that just decides, Daddy Elon might decide, yeah, I'm up for fixing the dog problem in Australia, right?
Yep.
But then it's real money, or as real as money can be.
Yep.
But like I say, government infrastructure projects are not real money. It's not, they're spending money into existence and they're fucking doing that nonstop all the time, every day.
Let me make something very clear to everybody out there. The government's money is our money.
Yeah, but it's not even real. So remember during COVID, like I can't remember what they did in America, but remember when they gave us, was it $900 or something? This gave everybody $900, right? That wasn't money. They didn't get that from somewhere. That didn't have to come out of
stimulus.
They just went, we're making up $900 per person, right? Do that again, but give it to me and let me fix the dog problem with it, right? Like, because they're doing that shit all the time. The type of money that we're talking about is a drop in the ocean. It's one fighter jet. You know what I mean? Like it's
exactly.
These are so like you could have the entire dog problem fixed to the point where no government agency in Australia is ever worried about where they get their next dog from, and that there's so many of them, we're exporting them all around the world for the cost of a fighter jet. Our 35s never happened and we never got the 22s, but one fighter jet, we could have the dog problem solved.
And a fraction of a submarine.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the snorkel on a submarine.
Yeah.
One of the propellers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On the upside of this, when you're looking at the trade-off, when anybody's doing the figures in their head, what it would do to our industry capability would be invaluable.
Well, it solves the working dog problem in all the working dog spaces. Yeah. Not in the short term, in the medium term, it solves that, right? But again, in the medium term, it upskills dog trainers incredibly.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We don't have to be just short-sighted because we've already gone through the upside of every little box that it could tick along the way. I think we've only just got to flesh this out. I mean, obviously you've been meditating on this a lot longer than I have, because the reason I'm asking all these brilliantly placed questions of mine, this is the first time we're having this discussion.
We've never really spoken about this.
We haven't. Well, we've had...
Other than me mentioning it.
Yeah, we've had it mentioned, but I've never had it fleshed out before. So it's piquing my curiosity. And as you're discussing, as you're bringing it up, I can start to see the vision of the template building out in my head.
Yeah.
So I can see it, where it could go and the potential reach it could have and what it could mean to our industry. And as I've said before, one of the things that is very important to me is creating legacy. Not about myself. It's not about erecting a monument in my name. It's never going to happen. But what's important to me when I'm on my deathbed, I'd love to look back on this. Just for myself, I had a little part in that. I had a little part in helping these people achieve that, and that was important to me. Like I stood for something. Things like this are important for your legacy, but it's done for the right reasons. It's not done for people's unyielding egos. It's done that we're leaving something behind for the next generation to say, we can make this better. You know, like we can expand on this. And instead of us being disenfranchised and fragmented and having state groups not talking to federal groups, we can have everybody talking to everyone.
Yeah.
We're all in on this. We are one country. We're defending our borders. We're protecting our citizens. This is in the national interest of the Australian sovereign and its people.
Yeah, for sure. I think the vision that I have of it too is that each one of these places becomes a mecca in its region.
Yeah.
So you got an agility trial, have it at our place, right? Yep. We've got a whole field here. You want to do some lure coursing?
Yeah, this is a dog place. It's for dog things to happen.
Yeah, and so in that way, we're constantly exposing ourselves to new information, new people, new techniques, but people to us as well. And so that's part of my vision for it, is that the cross-leveling of the staff, like the amount of training that could go into making sure that not only are we got really good trainers at each facility, but we're continuing to make more of them, right? Yep. Like we're continuing to upskill people and put them out into the community that have dealt with real dogs. And now when someone's got their dog pulling them down the street, they're like, oh, this is easy. I'm fucking working with killers that drag me from the kennel. Or when somebody has a dangerous dog that won't come out of the kennel, they're like, oh, this is Wednesday. Like I'm used to this.
Exactly right. I have an employee that's been accredited through this school. They know how to do this.
Yeah.
And for argument's sake, the Animal Justice Party have any ethical concerns, we'll say we're addressing all of them. You don't need to be involved in this because we're addressing all of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, something I agree with you entirely, and I hadn't really thought of it, was I think having an ethics or a oversight person embedded in it, where we want to know how we're treating the dogs. Like we've got a person whose job it is to report on that.
He's our ethics manager. You can speak to them. They have all the data, all the information, and total transparency to take you through.
Yeah. And that person is overseen by me or the other that goes like, hey, I don't want to see your fucking biases in this. Like I want to see true...
this is true neutrality.
Yeah.
You speak the facts. There is no left. There is no right. This is total neutrality. This is how it stands.
Yeah, we're aiming to success and nothing else.
You're talking the science, not the bought science.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my plan. Putting it out in the universe.
I like it. When you first brought this up to me, it was a couple of years ago, I think, the first time I heard the idea of it. I kind of liked it, but I kind of thought, it's a pie in the sky. There's just no way.
It very much is.
It is, but I just kept thinking to myself, it's one of those things that sounds good on paper, but just trying to get everybody to agree on it. I actually think we're at a time where I've seen cohesion happening.
Yeah.
Like I've seen federal and state and army all talking to each other thanks to a few key people who actually have got together and said, hey, we should be mapping this out together.
Yeah.
Because of those key people, and those key people should actually be involved in this project.
Yeah.
Because they're the people that make sound investment in other people's futures, not just their own.
Yeah, and I think this is the beauty of it, that if the money is allocated and you get people who are like, I oppose that,
Yeah.
it's like, cool, man, you'll be left behind. Like,
Yeah.
that's we're doing it. We don't need your fucking permission.
Yeah.
And so if your organization, your unit, whatever, doesn't want to be involved in it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fuck off. We're doing it, and you'll come groveling back to us in the future, and we'll provide you the dogs then.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to play at the start, that's fine. We don't need you. That's what's important about it, is the money's put there and I don't have to ask anyone for help. I can pay the people who I need to do the jobs. And I know all the right, like, off the top of my head, I can name most of the people that should be involved in this from around Australia. And if I have the money, I can pay them enough that they will come on board, right? Even though they've got their own shit going on. But I'm like, hey, man, here's your salary. And it's a salary. You're getting paid that every 2 weeks. We're working towards this.
Yep.
People are fucking doing that. If there's some obstructionist that's like, I don't think it's a good idea, we're like, fuck you. You're not involved then. That's fine. We're doing it. Anyway, that's my plan.
Elon, I know you're an avid listener of the show.
He is. I heard that.
Just sends me a casual tweet every now and then and just says, love what you boys are doing. Keep it up.
My bigger concern, ethically, is when you say, if somebody offers you that money overseas, would you do it? And probably not. But if there were private backers offering the money to do it in Australia, there'd be some concerns over who.
Well, the concerns.
Am I taking Russian money to do this?
Well, that's the thing is that people,
I mean?
and that's why I'm saying transparency needs to be disclosed up front.
Yeah.
Like you can't start this on.
Yeah, I think that the whole thing would have to be open source.
It does.
Like the books are here. It's a
Right.
Google Drive. You can fucking log in and see it whenever you want.
Yeah.
This is where we're spending all the money.
Yeah, I think that would sit comfortably with people as long as they couldn't find any form of corruption through it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're living in a world where people just don't have anything better to do with their time other than to look into your business.
Yeah.
And if they can find something that's remotely dirty or suspicious or it looks like it's been black opt or something like that, immediately it raises a red flag and
fair
immediately
enough.
all of the
Yeah, we're not doing anything secret.
diehards
We're
are-
fucking raising dogs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
But
you can see all
I know that, but like I'm saying, like if suddenly you get $30 to $50 million, I think it's more around $50 million. That's the sum that I'm sort of doing in
I'm
my
happy
head.
to make it 50.
I'm thinking 50 just to make this plausible with all the salaries and with the buy-ins and the infrastructure and everything like that. It's considerable. But as long as that did come through an ethical source, which I suggested before, perhaps we could look at crowdfunding it where everybody's got a say in it. Then we could say to them, well, as a reward, we're going to put on a seminar and all the people who did this tier of money, you get VIP spots. Like
Yeah, you get access to it all. Yeah.
you get access to it all. Like you're part of our training plan going forward.
The main thing is wherever the money came from, you just don't want to be beholden to people. So you can see how I'm spending it, but you don't have any say in how I'm spending it.
Yeah, that's right. They can't put a leash around your neck and then say, well, you got my money, now you're my bitch.
Yeah, that's not how it's going to go.
It can't be like that.
Yeah. That's why the government stuff never works. There's plenty of government breeding programs. There's plenty of government facilities that are kind of like this. But what there isn't is a czar that's in charge of it all. That is like, no, fuck you. This is how we're doing it. Like, don't try and tell me what to do. You don't know anything about this. Fuck off, bean counter. Like, I know that one's $3 cheaper. I know that widget is $3 cheaper than that one, but you don't understand the difference between what those widgets are. So don't fucking tell me which one to buy.
Well, that's what happens when investment groups get involved on board with a good product because they come in and they say, well, now that we're on board and now we have shareholders' money involved in this, now you have to find a much cheaper way of producing the same product and we don't care if the standard goes down. We just need it done cheaper so we can see more return.
That's what happens, say, throughout the army for sure.
Happens everywhere, man.
Take, for example, like things having to go to tender and stuff in government. So I have to choose my words carefully, but a long time ago, we bought DUF. It's where you can just buy stuff off the shelf, right?
Yep.
The problem with the military buying stuff off the shelf is it's not in the system then, right? So you can't get replacement parts. You can't get that kind of stuff. Like we bought 100 kits of it and we've just got 100 kits. Whereas usually in the military, if you want 100 kits of it, you need like 500 kits of it because people will break it. It needs to be replaceable. You've got to issue it to new people that come in, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
So then it goes on to like the block scales, which is where it's got a number and it can be ordered and they keep a certain number of them on the shelf at all time, ready to go to replacement things. But what especially happens in special forces is we get a lot of what they call DUF, where you just buy it, right?
Yep.
But years ago, we bought a particular type of body armor and we just fitted out I think it was just a platoon initially, like 30 guys got kitted out with this fucking really slick body armor. And it wasn't even the plates, it was just the carriage of it.
Yep.
And then we're like, we want this, but it has to go to tender. And so then they go, okay, but you can't say you want that brand. You have to tell us what it is you want, describe it, and anybody who meets that description at the lowest price is going to be the provider of it. So what we ended up with was this fucking dog shit version.
Why is that?
Because that's how the government system works, right? So, and that's to avoid corruption and all kinds of stuff. But that's what slows things down and avoids. And if there's an Australian vendor of a product that you cannot buy, I don't even know where that law is, but that is a law that if there's an Australian vendor of a foreign product, you have to buy from that Australian vendor. You can't go around them directly to the manufacturer.
I don't mind that.
Yeah.
As long as the Australian vendor can provide you with...
Yeah. Have I ever told you the story of Aquaterra and how they started?
Who's Aquaterra?
Aquaterra is gun runners in the country. There's really two. There's Niawa and there's Aquaterra. So they're the biggest companies that import military equipment, right? So like guns and stuff like that. Aquaterra... Now, this is 10th hand. The guy that owned that had a little sail repair shop in Launceston, and you could stop in, get your sails repaired, and away you go. So one day, this guy comes in getting his sails repaired, and while he's waiting for his sails to be repaired, he's like, hey, what's that on the wall? And he goes, oh, that's called a Mustang survival suit. He goes, what is it? He goes, well, it's a fucking like dry suit that is designed to survive in Arctic temperatures with. They're crazy expensive. They're like $10,000 each. I've got that one. I'm aware of it because I'm, into it. And I know the guys at Mustang who have made that thing. And I've got this one here. So this gentleman says, oh, that's interesting. I'll take it. So while he's sitting there getting his sails repaired, he buys it. It was Tony Bullimore. And so when he capsized in Antarctica, the rules around the rescue in Antarctica, if you're in the water for more than 24 hours, you're dead, right? Like there's no way you're surviving. So when the Navy got there 6 days later to rescue him, they're expecting to find his frozen fucking corpse. And what they find is him alive in his Mustang survival suit. So the Navy decide, well, we have to fit out everybody in these Mustang survival suits. They call Mustang and say, hey, we need 50,000 of these suits to fit out on all the ships. And they go, no, we got an Australian distributor. You have to talk to him. This guy made a phone call and fucking bought all these suits and sent it to the Navy. Now that could be a butchered story, right? Like that's 10th hand. I've heard that story. But that's how he got into the business of selling stuff to the military. Because he's like, you guys want anything else? Because this is a fucking ton of money I've made. Anyway, all right, we should go train some dogs.
Yeah. I like the plan. And hopefully somebody will tinker around this inside their head and
maybe
see value in it.
Or not.
Or not.
But I'm ready.
It certainly looks that way.
I need just probably another 6 months to finish the online course that I'm doing, and then I can change to this. I really would like to get that body of work done.
Yeah.
But after that, I can change to this if need be. All right. Hey, that's it for another episode, Canon Paradigm.
Yeah.
You did it. You made it to the end.
We did.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You listened all the way through. Fuck yeah.
I just want to give a big shout out for the episode we did last week.
Oh, yeah.
I know that it was a little bit convoluted and it went all around the world and then came back a couple of times.
Bit like this one.
It frustrated a few people, I know that, but it also gave me the scope to have some very interesting conversations with people. As I said to you and I alluded to you in a message, it's given me the most reach to people that don't feel confident in talking about this. It was like therapy for me, to be honest. Dumping that off my chest made me feel like I've just gotten rid of a burden that I've been carrying around for a long time. And having those humbling conversations with people. Thank you very much, by the way, for trusting me with that confidence as well. Hopefully you two will be able to escape some of the prejudice that you're feeling. And I'm talking both vaccinated and unvaccinated people who are talking about the COVID thing in itself. Not only that, but also not bought into, but understands my concerns and the long-reaching effect of what I think is a greater problem with pharmaceutical companies meddling into our field. Some people said they found it frustrating. Some people didn't understand the concept of it, but also a majority of people said it's very plausible when you play it out and when you think deeply into it. And I said, unfortunately, that's where my mind went and that's where I spend a lot of the time doing it. But anyway, I'm not going to rehash the whole episode. If you want to go back and listen to it, I know we never really concluded anything of it because there is nothing that I can conclude on it. It's only a suspicion. As I've alluded to before, I'm a suspicious motherfucker. I've been made that type of person from interactions with my stepfather upward. It shaped me into this person. I've become suspicious of people, and then I've become suspicious of things in the industry and things in my life. And it's not that I'm constantly waiting for people to disappoint me. It's just that it has given me a sense of I need to see how things play out. I need to look beyond the storefront or the racket that's been presented to me. I think in life, a lot of times what people do is they play out a racket to you, and then behind the storefront is the real dealings of what's going on behind. So in the back room, that's where the honesty lies. And that's where I try and look into in people that I deal with and in businesses that I'm dealing with and so forth is what's happening in that back room. What's that back room discussion? Forgive me if immediately I push you away sometimes. That's the sort of person I am. I give a little bit of pushback because I want to know that I'm dealing with a real person and not just somebody who's trying to pitch something to me or get something from me. I need to know, do I have a friend here or is this a business dealing? Because when I've let my guard down and I've realized, I thought you were my friend and this was just a business dealing, it's fucking hurt me to no end. That's my problem, but that's what shaped me into that suspicious person I'm talking about. I'm also afraid for our industry, genuinely afraid for our industry when I think there's a higher power playing with us like we're battery hens bred to lay eggs for them.
You know what would solve that problem?
What's that?
My project here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm in agreement with that. Yeah. That's why I'm interested in it. And I think it was timely and I think it was the right time to talk about it because I really feel that this would address a lot of our problems and a lot of the meddling that's going on. And it would also expose them along the way. Without us having to do it, they would expose themselves.
That's it.
For another conspiracy.
That's it for another episode of the K9 Paradigm.
Yeah.
As always, if you like what you hear, like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from.
Yep.
If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is Patreon. Jump into Patreon. You can give us a few bucks a month. That'll get you some cool stuff in there. I fixed an outing issue, interestingly, with a dog the other day, and I'm about to put that into Patreon, I believe. So that'll be there. Buy a shirt. You could get into spring. Links are in the show notes. Same as Patreon. The links are in the show notes. So wherever you're listening to us, click on one of those. That'll take you to the thing.
If we get this facility, how much space we'll have for tapestries?
Oh, there'll be tapestries everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be how we get accused of corruption. Like, how much money did you spend on K9 Paradigm tapestries? You make $8 off of each one? Fucking hell, you've made $16. Corruption. All right. So do that.
Yep.
If you want to get in touch with us, best way to do that is to jump into the Facebook discussion group. Even though Facebook's a weird place, we seem to be holding on to people there. We're engaged. We're having nice conversations. Nobody's tearing anybody apart. We're keeping our conspiracy theories to a minimum in there, although we do it a little bit. But if you want to get in contact with us directly, you can shoot us an email. We are info@thek9paradigm.com. If you want to tell me about how to get this money to build the facility, you can shoot me an email. It's pat@serious.business.com.
Hang on. I'm just trying to work out the math here. So we've got 10,000 listeners in here. All you have to do is crowdfund us with $5,000 each. It's done.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That might be
a bit of a reach.
Yeah, it might be too tall an ask of everybody that's listening.
Yep. Barbara de Groot, where are you on this?
But you never know. You never know.
You never know.
All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye.